All right, welcome back. We're going to keep going now with this unit and talk about enterprise systems. I've introduced them already, but let's look at some specific examples and what sets them apart. So we've talked about the idea that we want to improve our business processes and standardize them. And there's some ways we can do that. And some of the software we're seeing that helps with that is enterprise resource planning software, customer relationship management software, and supply chain management software. All right, so that's what I want to go through with you now. So standardizing business processes can have a lot of benefits, right? And we talked about how early on we sort of were doing our own individual thing, right? We sort of had tailor-made software for each particular group. As we redesigned the business processes to take advantage of systems, they were often unique to each organization, right? Because we were starting from scratch there, and there wasn't a lot that you could buy at the time. But software vendors started to design systems that had integrated applications, and part of that started to standardize business processes, right? So we would see this in particular industries where we would standardize accounting processes, for example, or standardize how we hire people in the oil and gas industry, or how we hire people in the education industry, or how we manage teaching in the education industry. So those became industry standard practices, right? They integrated activities across departments, saved a lot of costs by doing it individually on our own because we could just buy a solution ready to go, right? So that's kind of nice. And, we look at examples there. Well, Oracle would be one company that was a big player early on and still is. SAP is another one, big German company that started in sort of the shipping and the auto industry and things like that, and now does everything. And they sort of dominate the marketplace, but there's lots of others as well, right? We'll talk about that a little bit later here. But there's also some problems, isn't there? Right? If we think about some of the problems we might encounter with this approach, right? Well, industry standard, who says what's standard? So if I look at industry standard processes, there might be some disagreement about that, right? Okay, so the way that they decide, we should handle registration at a college might work for most colleges, but maybe we don't like it or it doesn't work for Camosun. So even though it's a standard in the industry, we may not agree. So that could be one problem, right? Maybe we do things one way now and the industry standard is a lot different. And even if it's better and we decide to adopt it, right, it could be substantial changes that we have to make. Substantial changes to make if we want to adopt, right? To adopt the new software. Even if we agree that it's better, there may be a long learning curve and a long road for us to go. We have to hire some new people. We may have to let some people go or redesign their jobs. Those are painful things, right? Those are difficult choices, big changes to make. So we got to keep that in mind as well, right? It's not just sort of, oh, I'll buy it, put it in tomorrow and be good the next day, right? These are difficult projects. Now, we think about enterprise applications. There's really three sort of categories that we can talk about. ERP, enterprise systems, or what used to be called enterprise resource planning, that's where we get the ERP from. Those sort of cover the whole organization. Customer relationship management systems, they cover just a small part. And supply chain management systems, they cover a different part of the organization. But all of them integrate at least some business functions within the organization and maybe beyond as well. Right? So let's have a look at our first one, ERP. Our goal here and the idea here is to build a system that covers pretty much the entire organization. Right? So one piece of software that we use for everything we do. All right. Now, if you think about Oracle or SAP or other big organizations, Microsoft, they do it as well. That's the type of software that they may offer in some industries, right? Where you buy their system and you can run your entire company with it. Right? Some of the key benefits, different business units can communicate and share information. That's great. It's cheaper to move information around the organization because the access is better, right? So it's going to save us money, not just time, but money as well. Gives us real-time insight into the business. That's a big win as well, aren't they? So these are all sort of big pluses that we're seeing here. But it can also be very invasive. It can cost a lot and take a lot of time to install. That's a challenge. And like I said a few minutes ago, it can change work processes in people's jobs, and dealing with people and change is not always easy. Right? So we got some big pluses we're going after, but we have to keep in mind the challenges as well. Right? It's not just super simple. So here's a different way of looking at it, or a more visual way perhaps for you. We've got a good cross-functional view of the whole organization, right? Accounting, sales, operations, marketing, all the different business functions. We've got formal business models that we can look at that are articulated and clearly defined business processes, and we can share those, and people can now work a slightly different way. The data is centralized, right? So these are all great benefits. That's a big one, right? We know how valuable data is. If we can centralize it and make sure that it's protected and we're doing the right things with it, that's a big benefit to the organization, and it's available to people when they need it. So, but it can be challenging. And here's a neat little graphic. They say it's like the pot of gold at the top of the mountain. There's a bit of a trek to get up there, isn't there? Right? There's some pitfalls along the way, and it may take a while to get it. So it can be very expensive, but the rewards can be great as well. All right. So we probably would start something like this by doing a cost benefit. Have you ever heard of that? Where we look at the cost of something, and then we think about the benefits, and we add those up and decide, is it even worth it? Our college has done that. We are in the middle of implementing a big enterprise system at the college now to replace CamLink and some other systems, colleague and things like that across the college. It's been a few years already, and there's still time to go on it. It's costing a lot of money, but we think the benefits are going to be well worth it, right? So that was something we did at the very beginning to decide whether we should even start. Good. So that's enterprise-wide systems, right? And if we're going to implement those, we pick the functions we're going to use. Maybe we start with just some units and then we add more as we go. We map our current business processes to the standardized ones that come with the software. They even provide ways of doing that in the software where we can configure it and that sort of thing. That's great. And then we change as needed. Now we can change how we do things in our organization, or we could customize the software. Now the software will have some ability to customize in a limited way built in, and that's okay, so we could take advantage of that. Sometimes people pay programmers to come along and actually modify the software more dramatically, and we call that sort of a bigger customization. The question is that good or bad? Well, what we find is if we change the software, more than what the vendor might provide, we're running a bit of risk, because when they release the next version, there's no guarantee now that our previously modified software will even work with the new version. Plus, it's expensive to modify software, and we could make mistakes along the way by not fully understanding things. So customization might seem tempting, but maybe it's not the best idea. We can customize a little within what the software allows, and that's great, but we may want to be a little bit careful if we go beyond that. All right. So we'll pick the functions we want to use. Let's say I want to use all the accounting functions and a couple of the HR functions, maybe one for recruitment and one for retention, let's say. And then I'll look at what we do now, kind of map those two together, see where the differences lie, decide whether we should change how people do their jobs, or we should try to modify the software slightly. All right. So that's our idea with these enterprise systems. And many organizations have done really well with this and have gone a long way towards having a better organization. So we get a more uniform organization, right, where things happen the same way in every department and we all use the same software. We get more efficient operations and we get customer different processes and all kinds of good things like that that we might want. And we have firm-wide information. And I think that's really a key one, isn't it? Having information available to everyone is going to improve decision making. If you think back all the way to our second unit in the course where we talked about decision making, one of the key inputs for making a good decision is good quality information to base that decision upon. Right? So these are some big values or big benefits to it. I mentioned SAP and Oracle. There's a few other big vendors, SAP and Oracle there. Dynamics from Microsoft. NetSuite offers one. Sage, right? You may have seen Sage Accounting already. Intuit, that's more the smaller business side of things, but you can buy some great packages from Intuit. They started with QuickBooks and software like that, but then they expanded the features in those to handle customer management and other parts of your organization as well for small companies, because they realized small companies can benefit from these things too. So we started sort of hitting the bigger organizations because there's big gains there. But now as time has gone by, we figured out ways to provide the same type of value even to smaller companies. All right, so that's just a handful of vendors. There's lots more, right? If you go search for ERP vendors online, you'll see all kinds of vendors. You can even search by a particular industry. Let's imagine for a minute that your goal after you graduate from business school is to go and open a chain of restaurants. Well, you can go online and search for enterprise systems to help manage restaurants, and you'll see there's lots of particular ones just for your industry. All right. Let's switch now and look at CRM. And you remember what I said CRM was all about? That was customer relationship management. So we're managing that whole customer side of the business with this type of software. We consider this to be an enterprise system as well, but kind of a sort of subset almost, right? It only covers the part of the organization dealing with customers. That might be things like marketing, where we attract customers, getting those customers to make the switch to our company where we're selling them. Then we manage the whole relationship with them after the sale, supporting them and reselling more product. We may even have things in there to help us deal with loss, right? Or churn, you may call that, where we turn over customers, right? And one way to do that is we could categorize customers. And if they're a low value customer, we might just let them go. But if they're a high value customer, we might put some resources into winning them back. Right? Have you ever noticed that? I noticed, for example, if I call my cell phone company from my individual number to get some help, I might wait around a long time talking to automated responses and then get someone who really can't do much to help me other than maybe offer me a $5 credit. And it takes a long time. It's almost not worth doing. It's frustrating, waste of time. But when I was running my company and we had many cell phones, right, before I moved on to teaching, I had an organization that's quite large and I sold that. When I was running that company, we had lots of cell phones and a big account, a big business account with our cell phone provider. I would call there, I would get a much different service level, right? I would talk to a person almost right away, and they would go out of their way to try to understand what was going on, and if it was reasonable, to make sure they helped me out, right? So I was a high value customer there, whereas now I'm just a low value customer, like most of us. All right, so the software can help with all of that, can't it? Because even when I call in, it can identify who I am and route that call to the right person. These are all types of functions we might see in the customer lifecycle, right? So this is kind of a neat diagram to explore that. So the systems in there, well, we've got systems to help with getting customers, so solicitation we call that. We bring new customers in. maybe entice them to our organization. All kinds of things we can do now, even advertising online through social media and things like that. We can do lead tracking, right, where we track people we've focused in on and to see what kind of campaigns they might respond to, what campaigns work and don't work, things like that, and send out the right sales reps to talk to those people perhaps. And then after we get people and sell to them, we're down into this purple zone here. All kinds of things we can do. We can look at their purchase history to find new ways to sell to them and increase sales. We can prioritize people based upon how much they've purchased, for example. We can focus on our high value customers. We can get back people we may have lost. All sorts of things like that. We can manage orders. We can resolve problems. You know, you name it. The software can help with these things. These are all part of our customer relationship management system or software. All right. We can even provide information after keeping track of customers for a while that could be useful in product redesign. Without a system like this, you know, we may find the sales reps in person were always getting complaints about a feature of our product, but that never really made it back to the design people in any sort of organized way. Well, now if we're logging those complaints in our system, that can be available to the design people. They can spot that and fix that problem for the next version of whatever it is we sell. All right. All of our customer database is stored in a single place, so everybody has access to it, from the product designers right through to the sales and support people. All right. So you can imagine that's going to do a much better job for us, isn't it? We're going to get better customer satisfaction. We're going to reduce our marketing costs. We're going to be more effective at our marketing. You know, believe it or not, I've even heard stories of people who have studied the data so much and tracked the data so well that they knew exactly what color tie to wear when they would go make a sales call, because they knew when they wore a particular color of tie that they increased their sales by 10%. You know, believe it or not, if we could track data, wouldn't that be cool? That's some of the really fun stuff, right, that's going on. So we're being more effective. We're lowering costs to get our customers and to keep them. We're finding new ways to sell to them, so that's going to boost our sales revenue. And if we're keeping them happier, we're going to reduce the churn rate. We're going to reduce that loss where we lose them and have to find a new customer or reacquire an old customer. So those are all great benefits, right? And you can see why that's so popular. Even in not-for-profits like the college, we have something very similar. Instead of calling customer relationship management, it'll be our registration and student support systems. That's what we're in the process of replacing right now, right? So it's not going to be long until you see a new version of CamLink kicking around at the college, and it's going to do a much better job for you, not just on helping you register, but on helping you manage your program so you can graduate as quickly and as easily as possible, right? So again, we think of you as our customers in a way, and we have similar systems to help with that. Let's look at our final one of the three, supply chain management. That's focusing on the other end of the business, isn't it? The supply chain. Now, the supply chain is really that whole link or chain starting from our raw materials. You can see here in my picture, starting with the raw materials over here, moving through supplier, manufacturing, distributing, retailer, and finally out to the customer. That's what we call a supply chain. That covers a lot of the organization, doesn't it? And it's all about transforming raw materials into finished products and getting those to the customers. All right. You may hear the word logistics as well from time to time. That's often referring to a similar thing, isn't it? The logistics of moving things from one end of the supply chain to the other. All right. So materials, information, payments, data basically flow from one end of the supply chain to the other, and contrary to what my little picture has here, they actually can flow back again, can't they? Can't the customer bring things back to the retailer or give them feedback? Can't the retailer return things to the distributor or give them feedback? Can't the distributor bring things back eventually, or give design feedback to the manufacturer, etc. Right? So we can't have a two-way flow of information. Let's not forget that. Here's a diagram from our book that kind of looks like a big mess, to be honest, but if we look at it more closely, it's not so bad at all. We've got our systems to help manage the whole supply side, right? We've got several different suppliers here, 4 of them. Those people may supply our company or they may supply another one. See, supplier 1 here and supplier 2 help us out. Supplier 1 also helps out one of our competitors, right? Okay, or a couple of them actually. And then we'll send things off to our distributor, but of course we may have more than one distributor, and that's fine. But each distributor may not just get stuff from us, but from other people as well, right? And then they'll send things to their retailers, and those retailers will sell to customers, and of course customers are free to go to different retailers, aren't they? So it's kind of a really interconnected web, isn't it, between all this stuff? But can systems help with that? Sure. And when you look at it this way, you can imagine why suppliers might appreciate if we could standardize as manufacturers, because then we can all buy the same software and we can talk together much more efficiently. If every manufacturer demanded different software, it'd be frustrating for suppliers to try to deal with multiple manufacturers. So again, standardization can be a really important factor in this. All right. If we do this well, companies can stay lean and be more responsive to customer demand. But integrating suppliers in a consistent way, they're out of our control, aren't they? They're not part of our company. We can't just order them to do something. We have to work with them as partners and convince them that it's worthwhile. Right? So again, there's some challenges here for us to think about. Overall, our goals, if we want to get some value out of these things, are to match our supply to the demand. So I don't want to be ordering raw materials to build products that are never going to be purchased, nor do I want to run out of materials and not be able to sell things to people who are standing there with money waiting to give it to me. I want to match those pretty well. And we're finding technology can help with that because of the flow of information. We're getting really good at matching supply to demand. That's going to let us reduce inventory levels, so we don't have to have giant warehouses, which are expensive, full of goods which may never sell, or not enough goods that may run out. And you may have noticed that. Look at Thrifty Foods, for example, on Vancouver Island. They have warehouses to hold products, but those warehouses are now managed much more efficiently than they may have been 30 years ago, where they would have either had to have held much more product in sort of waiting for people to want it, or they could run the risk that they would have product that nobody would want, right? We can improve delivery service, speed product time to market, all those kind of things. We're going to use our company assets more effectively, and our people, that's a big asset as well, more effectively. We're going to reduce the costs of every step of the supply chain, hopefully, and boost our sales. So lots of good business value coming out of supply chain management systems. But don't forget, they can be a little bit challenging to put in place, because we've got all the issues of putting something in place in our organization, plus the issues of dealing with suppliers who are outside of our company. So there's some challenges as well. So those are some of the systems we look at. Who's really good at logistics? Well, certainly companies like UPS and FedEx and companies like that are good at that, but also companies like Amazon, right? Amazon is just really a master at getting products in, moving them around, and getting them to market in a way that makes them a lot of money, right? So there's no doubt Amazon has done very well at this. Okay, so I'd like you to go ahead and read Chapter 7, complete the exercise for this unit as well. I've also posted some videos for you. They'll help with the exercise. You have to watch those first. So they're in D2L. That's sort of our extra material for this unit. So make sure you do that first, then do the exercise. Don't forget there's a quiz and a simulation on the textbook website. Make sure you get those done too. They all count for marks by the due date. All right, so that's it for this material. Good luck with it. If you need any help along the way, of course, don't hesitate to get a hold of me, and I'll give you a hand. All right, bye for now.